Okay, welcome to the first lesson of our new topic, surface area and volume. Today's lesson is about the metric system and converting between metric units of measurement. So these are all metric units here. We've got length, we've got capacity, mass, and we've got time as well. These are the units that we use in Australia. In other countries, they might use different units. For example, in America, they use miles. We don't use miles in Australia. There's also yards. We don't use yards in Australia. So they can differ depending on where you are in the world. And they're also called SI units sometimes. So you might see that, especially in physics or the science subjects. So the units for length, capacity, and mass here, these three flowcharts on the left and up here, they're all designed to work well with numbers that have a base of 10. So 10, 100, 1000, 10,000, and so on, which is great for us because it's easy to remember and it's easy to apply, because the 10 times tables are some of the easiest to remember. You only have to move the decimal place over to the right if you're multiplying by 10, and dividing by 10, you just have to move the decimal place over to the left. So these numbers are really easy to work with and they don't require much memorization, especially if you can remember the Latin prefixes too. So the Latin prefixes, that's for a centimeter, the Latin prefix is centi. For a millimeter, the Latin prefix is milli. For a kilometer, the Latin prefix is kilo. So if you can recognize that the Latin word kilo means 1,000, then that makes your task 1,000 times easier, because that means kilometer is 1,000 meters. So kilometer is 1,000 meters, and you can see that. And it means that a kilogram over here, it's got that same prefix, that's going to be 1,000 grams. And a kiloliter, well, that's going to be 1,000 liters. So you can remember that just by remembering that the Latin prefix kilo means 1,000. And basically, you do have to memorize these conversions. You need to memorize this up here. You don't need to memorize the whole flow chart. You just need to know that 10 millimeters, there are 10 millimeters in a centimeter, there are 100 centimeters in a meter, and there are 1,000 meters in a kilometer. And then you can move back and forth between these units. And the other thing you need to remember is that whenever you're moving from a larger unit to a smaller unit, so you're moving in this direction, following this arrow here, you need to multiply. Okay, and whenever you're moving from a smaller unit to a larger unit, so you're moving in the other direction, you're moving along this arrow here, you need to divide. And if you think about it, that's common sense, isn't it? Because if you want to go from meters to centimeters, for example, well, think about if we had 2 meters. That's going to be 200 centimeters, isn't it? Because a lot more centimeters can fit into that length than meters. A lot more of the smaller unit is going to be able to fit into that length or that space, whatever you're talking about. So the number should get larger because more of that smaller unit can fit. So you multiply. And it's the same when you go backwards. A lot less of a larger unit is going to fit into that space. Only 2 meters is going to fit into that space that 200 centimeters can fit into. So your number should get smaller when you're moving to a larger unit. Now, this measurement down here, time, is a little different as it doesn't use numbers with a base of 10. You can see it uses 60 and it uses 24. And if you go even further, imagine that days, we're going to go even larger than days. What would be next? Maybe weeks? Well, there's 7 days in a week, so it uses 7 as well. How many weeks are there in a year? 52, so it uses 52. So with time, we have to be careful, and we pretty much just need to memorize the conversions for time. You need to know that, there's 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, 24 hours in a day. You need to know there's 365 days in a year. You need to know there's 7 days in a week, 12 months in a year. You just need to remember all of those, which is pretty easy because we're pretty familiar with time conversions already. We use them in our everyday life all the time. But converting from a larger unit to a smaller unit, that's the same. You need to multiply if you're going this way. And converting from a smaller unit to a larger unit, that's the same too. You need to divide if you're going this way. So these other units, they're pretty easy to remember. Time is pretty much the only unit you work with that doesn't work with numbers of base 10. There is one other measurement that also doesn't work with base 10 numbers, and you guys probably remember it because we worked with it in our last topic that we did, trigonometry. And that was angle size. So degrees, minutes, and seconds, they're kind of similar to the seconds and minutes in time, in that there are 60 seconds in a minute and 60 minutes in a degree when we're talking about angle size. So they're also not to the base of 10. But aside from that, it's pretty straightforward. Most of your metric system units are going to be like these three here. They're going to be pretty straightforward and easy to remember as they work with numbers that have a base 10. So we can use these flowcharts to help us in remembering the conversions as we start off doing these questions in exercise 10.01. But please do try to start memorizing these conversions. Some of them you're already pretty familiar with. I know everyone is pretty familiar with length. We all know already that there's 10 millimeters in a centimeter, 100 centimeters in a meter, and 1,000 meters in a kilometer. We've been working with those numbers for quite some time. Some of the other ones might be a little bit less obvious. For example, megaliters here. So you might just need to remember, just work on memorizing that there's 1,000 kiloliters in a megaliter. Tons, you might not be super familiar with tons. We just need to remember that there's 1,000 kilograms in a ton, that sort of thing. And there's 1,000 milligrams in a gram as well. So let's get started with some of the examples now. Okay, so here are the examples for our first exercise. Example 1 is just asking us to convert from one unit to another unit. And we've got lots of different units here as well. So part A is dealing with mass, and it's asking us to convert 5.8 tons to kilograms. So we're going from tons to kilograms. We're moving from a larger unit to a smaller unit. So we know that means we need to multiply by something. What do we need to multiply by? Well, how many kilos are there in a ton? You might need to look at the flowchart to remember for tons, but try to memorize that there are 1,000 kilograms in a ton. So we need to multiply by 1,000 to move to this smaller unit of kilograms. So 5.8 times 1,000. Well, when we're multiplying by 1,000, we just need to move the decimal place. So there's 3 zeros, so let's just move 1, 2, 3. So the decimal place is now going to be here, which makes these zeros. And so now we have our number of kilos, 5,800 kilograms. So 5.8 tons is the same as 5,800 kilograms. And we didn't actually change the amount of mass. We didn't change the weight. We just changed the units. So the actual amount didn't change at all. 16 kilometers to centimeters. In this case, we have to be careful. We're going to need to perform two operations unless you know off by heart how many centimeters there are in a kilometer. I don't know off by heart, so I need to work with what I do know. And I do know how many meters there are in a kilometer. And I do know how many centimeters there are in a meter. So I'm going to use meters as my middleman to get to centimeters. So if I wanted to change kilometers to meters, and then meters to centimeters, well, I'm going from kilometers to meters first. So it's going to a smaller unit. So I need to multiply by something. How many meters are there in a kilometer? 1,000. So to get to meters, I need to multiply by 1,000. And then I'm going to an even smaller unit, so I need to multiply again. how many centimeters are there in a meter? 100. So I need to perform 2 operations to do this problem. So first I need to do 16 kilometers multiplied by 1000. So 16 multiplied by 1000, I just need to move the decimal place 3 spaces. So 1, 2, 3, it's just like adding 3 zeros. And now I've converted to meters. So 16 kilometers is the same as 16,000 meters, but I want it in centimeters, so I need to do another operation. So 16,000 multiplied by 100 now to get to centimeters. So again, I need to add another 2 zeros here. Just need to move that decimal place to the right 2 spaces, so that's another 2 zeros. And now I'm in centimeters. So I'm finally done. And this is quite a large number. It's 1,600,000 centimeters. When we're writing large numbers like this, we usually put spaces in between. So 16 kilometers is the same as 1,600,000 centimeters, which makes sense because 16 kilometers is quite a large distance. And centimeters are pretty small. Okay, now we're working with capacity here. And we're going from milliliters to liters. So this time we're going from a smaller unit to a larger unit because milliliters are smaller than liters. So we need to divide this time. And what are we going to divide by? You might just know off the top of your head that there are 1,000 milliliters in a liter. You might look at the prefix milli and say, okay, milli means 1,000th of a liter. So that means we're dividing by 1,000 to get 1/1000th. Or you might need to look at the flow chart, which is fine. And you can see that there are 1,000 milliliters to a liter. So we know we need to divide by 1,000 if we're converting to this larger unit. And dividing by 1,000, well, because we're dividing this time, we're just going to move the decimal place in the other direction. We're going to move it to the left, but we're still moving it 3 spaces. 1, 2, 3. So our liters is 23.7 liters. So 23,700 milliliters is the same as 23.7 liters. We didn't change the amount, we just changed the units. Okay, this one is time. So these conversions, we're not going to be using numbers to the base of 10. So we just need to memorize. We're going from minutes to hours. How many minutes are there in an hour? 60. We all know that. That's pretty easy. So are we dividing by 60 or multiplying by 60? Because we're going from a smaller unit to a larger unit, we're dividing by 60. Okay, because we're going to be able to fit less hours in this time than we are minutes. There's 1,500 minutes. We're not expecting more than 1,500 hours. It's going to be definitely less, so we need to divide to get a smaller number. So 1,500 divided by 60 is 25. So 25 hours.